Podcast. Tonight, we're going to be discussing assisted living. We haven't really touched on assisted living at this point, so I want to talk a little bit about what it takes. First, how we got into the assisted living business, and then what it takes to kind of get set up and get started with your own successful residential assisted living. Welcome back to the Home Care and Assisted Living business series, and I'm not gonna play around tonight. We're gonna get right to it. Um, how we initially got into the assisted living business, it was pretty organic. Um, from doing the home care business, we would get a lot of leads. A lot of families would say, we're not looking for anyone to come to our home. We would much rather have our loved one come to your home, or some facility that you may have or have access to. And in the beginning, obviously, we didn't have any properties, so what we did was we created partnerships and referral relationships with surrounding assisted living facilities that we trusted and we wouldn't mind doing business with, and we would give a referral fee for all the clients that we send them that they would actually close. So if that client would actually become a resident at their facility, we'll get a referral fee, and usually the referral fee would be 100%. So that would be a 1 month's rent. So if the assisted living was charging 4,500, we want 4,500 for our referral fee. If they were charging 3,500, we want 3,500 for our referral fee. It's great money, but it's even greater money when you own a facility, because they're going to get that 3,500, that 4,500, that 5,500 every month on an average of 13 to 18 months is what the national average is for the stay of most residents in assisted living facilities, and it can go up to much longer. Some people move in there and they stay there into their past, and sometimes they're with you for multiple years, or at least several months. So it was pretty much a no-brainer. It was like, okay, how do we leverage our home care business into opening up an assisted living? And first, again, just like we started the home care, we had to do our research. We reached out to a lot of people who had their facilities, found out, and then Googled obviously and checked our state website and see what the requirements were. And we got enough information to where, as though we had there that we learned about the training program in the state of Maryland, and in a lot of states they require specific training for assisted living managers. And your manager has to be, the owner has to either hire a manager and bring them on, or be a manager themselves. I recommend that if you're going to get into the business, you might as well go ahead and take the training. It's 80 hours in our state, but it varies different states. Some states are 40 hours, 20 hours training, some are 80, and some are 0. So it just all depends on your state's requirement. We took the training, but we weren't, we just weren't ready to purchase a property. So we had the training. We were still referring to different assisted living facilities, and we didn't really know what to do as far as getting a property. And we found out, as we currently work with a lot of new clients for the assisted living coaching, we see that that's also been a struggle for them. Um, how we ended up doing our first property was with a landlord, a owner who owned his own property. He owned the property. We actually were renting it from him to live in it at first. And we told him that, we were interested in moving out, but, obviously he's a landlord. He wants to keep tenants in there. So we were wondering if we asked him, would he be interested in allowing us to rent his property out as a assisted living facility. We were up front with him. We let him know that we wanted a long-term lease, at least 5 years. We would pay the market rate that we were paying as tenants, and then once every resident that we acquired, we agreed to pay a little more the rent, a little more in rent per resident. So if we had one resident, and we were paying 2,000, we would pay extra 250 for that new resident that the base rate was 2,000, and then we'll pay a little more, an extra 250 because once we had a resident. So if the place was licensed for 5 people, we put five. Once we got 5 residents, he was getting the base rate, the base rent, and then also 5 times 250. So he was. It was a great relationship. We worked it, and we set up the property. We did everything. We had the license, the furniture and stuff. There was very little changes that we had to make to the property. It was one level, so all the rooms was on the first floor. We didn't have to do any chair lifts, stair lifts, or anything like that. Just put a basic furniture, the state required furniture in the property, and eventually got licensed. And then that's how we, in a nutshell, opened up our first facility, our first private residential assisted living community or facility, whatever you want to call it. And that's it. And then from there, obviously, we were able to, save money, and then eventually buy a home. And then the first home that we bought, we also converted that to an assisted living. And that's always been that's been like the strategy from here on out. We buy a home, convert it to assisted living, live in it, buy it, live in it, convert it to assisted living, move out, and then so on and so forth. And that's kind of like my long-term investment strategy for my retirement. That's basically my retirement plan, to continue to buy homes and live in them, get them set up as assisted livings, and then transition out of them, and obviously bring residents and staff in, get it state get the state license, and move on to the next one. It's nothing. I mean, I can say it pretty quickly, but it doesn't happen that quickly. Obviously, it takes time to, get approved for a loan, get your credit up to where it needs to be. You have to have a down payment in place. You have to find the property. That takes time, working with a realtor. But once you get everything in place, it shouldn't be, as difficult as your first one or your second one. Your third or fourth one are going to be a lot easier. So right now we'll just kind of jump into. That's pretty much how we got into it. If you guys have any questions or comments or something, if I may, because I want to get to this checklist so we can kind of add some great value and not just kind of go over what we did, but like an actual checklist, the stuff that you're going to need. But if there are some things that you have questions about, feel free to ask us via email. You can even send us voice messages on this on the podcast app. So I'm gonna jump into the checklist to open a successful assisted living. And the first thing you want to do is get a business plan together, outline your budget, your vision, your marketing, everything you plan on doing to get that actual facility set up, running, the numbers, the costs, the fixed costs, everything that you're going to need to get it ready to take a resident in. You want to write it out, have it outlined, so you kind of have a roadmap and a vision and a plan and what direction you're going. Most states, well, I know the states we've been dealing with, they want to see one as well. So we do have a template business plan for assisted living in our assisted living starter kit. And yeah, the business plan is the first thing that you want to set up. You also next you want to figure out what the state requirements are. You just go to your state's website. Some state websites, I'm gonna be honest, are very difficult to find this stuff. So if you're not finding it pretty quickly, it's probably buried into some kind of codes and all of this stuff that you have to decipher. Just call down there, tell them what you're doing. Call your Department of Aging or your health department, the state's health department, and just ask them for the assisted living application for residential assisted living. If they don't use that specific term, because they use different terms around the country, just let them know that you want to provide medical care to seniors in a home environment, and you're looking for the licensing for eight residents and below, because when you start getting a little bit over eight 10 and 15, the zoning changes, the fire inspection and reporting changes, everything changes. So start with, when you asking them and you're trying to go in and figure out the state requirements, use a lower number for residents so you don't get sent down the wrong track. And you'd be looking at how to open up a nursing home or something like that. So, because like I said, some states don't have the same terminology, but once you explain it to them, they should be able to help you. So you definitely want to get the state requirements, and then if they have training, go ahead and take the training. The training is they usually have a list of certified or verified vendors or nurses usually are able to administer the test or the training. So you just have to get the state list. Again, this is only applicable to the states that require the training. And if your state does require training, they usually have a list of people who are in your state or in your area who are providing that training. And again, it's usually nurses. And once you figure out the state requirements and you get your training, you want to start looking for an actual property. At this point, you want to contact your local realtor, get in contact with a mortgage broker. Usually, your realtor can connect you with a mortgage broker. And if you're going into the direction of purchasing, and if you're just going to lease, all you would need is a realtor to help you out. Why we choose to use a realtor opposed to just going on Craigslist or just going online or just looking for rental properties to fit our criteria is that a realtor is going to streamline the process. They're going to, you could just simply tell them your criteria, tell them your state requirements and what the state requires the property to have as far as like zoning, the square footage per room, stuff like that, and tell them the communities and the areas you want to be in, and they could begin to send you list of these specific properties. And also what they can do is they can begin to negotiate and communicate with the owners for you. So you're not out there calling 100 people every day trying to, schedule, first get them on the phone, get their number and schedule visits to go check out their house and then negotiate the lease and and all this stuff. You could use a realtor to do all that stuff as long as you have your realtor up front, understanding what he or she needs to do to meet these state requirements for your facility. He or she can then go into the marketplace or go into the MLS, was the multiple listing service, and find those exact properties that you're looking for, and then they can start sending them to you. You can look at the pictures and stuff online, the listing online, and the ones you like and the ones that you feel like will fit the criteria. You can schedule. You tell your realtor to schedule the visits, and you guys can start going to check out some properties. And then from there, the properties that you choose, you put in offers to the you let your realtor make an offer to the homeowner, the landlord. That's if you're going to lease, and if you're going to purchase, the same requirements. I mean, the same way that you're going to be working with the realtor. The way you're going to be working with the realtor doesn't really change purchasing or leasing, but the only difference is you're going to be making an offer to purchase and you're going to be making an offer to lease. And you never ever take the offer, whatever they put on the retail, nobody never pays ticket price in real estate. So just a rule of thumb, if they say they're renting it for $1,700 a month, offer them $1,500 and you guys negotiate from there. If when you do start making offers on properties with the lease, from the leasing perspective and not owning or purchasing, you definitely want to make sure that your realtor is giving them all the information up front on what you're trying to do and letting them know that you're looking for a long-term lease. And that can also help with your negotiation. So once you got a property, either you put a property on contract to buy or you lease a property and you're excited about it, then you want to start, obviously finding your furnishings to get the property, the furnishings that you need, the bed, the nightstand, So Maryland has a specific requirements, and most states have these same requirements that you have to have a twin bed, a nightstand, a lamp, a dresser, and a chair per resident. So the room has to be big enough to fit those things in it, and it still has to have room for the resident can negotiate the room and navigate with a probably a wheelchair or walker, and get out safely through a window in case of a fire emergency. Um, and obviously, if you're going to put two residents in a room, the room has to be twice the size to fit that exact those exact furnishing requirements that are still hold true. No matter if you have one or two residents in there, you still have to have each one of those items. In Maryland, I think the minimum requirement for a room is 120 for two people and 80 square feet for one person. It might be 120 or 140, but I always look for 140 or more when I'm looking at two people. I don't want to put a person in, even if the requirement is 120. I want to put and I mean 120 square foot. I want to have at least 140 square foot for two people, and obviously 80 square foot is more than enough for one person. And another thing when it comes to setting up the rooms, Maryland doesn't allow you to have more than two people in the room, no matter how big the room is. So you can have this huge, master bedroom, can fit five beds in there, but it doesn't matter. You can only put two residents per room. And again, different states have different rules. So based on your state's requirements, you just have to stick to them and go from there. Another thing, just going down the checklist, is you're gonna have to create a sketch of the house, like draw on a piece of paper all the rooms, all the exits, and you're gonna have to mark all the rooms and all the exits, and have a sketch. And when you submit your license to the state, and when you submit your application to get your license, they usually want to see a sketch. Some states require zoning at different levels, at different points in different communities, so you definitely have to check on your zoning. And another thing that the states are going to look into, uh, most states work can make you check into, is a fire inspection report. How do you get a fire inspection report? You just contact the local fire department that the house is located in and have them come by, and they can give you a fire inspection report. They'll send out a fireman and he'll come do the you schedule it through the fire department, and they'll come out and do the inspection for you. So the first kind of preliminary steps is obviously getting the application, studying the application, doing a business plan, figuring out what the state requirements are. If there's training, get the training, get the site, the actual property, whether you're going to buy or lease, figuring that out with a realtor, mortgage company, with your own, looking at your own financial situation, credit, your ability to come up with a down payment. If you're purchasing, these things are some things you got to think about. And just a quick side note, when you start thinking about purchasing versus leasing, you're probably if you've been at your job for 3 years, you have verified income for the last 3 years, and your credit isn't horrible, and you can come up with a down payment, you're probably closer than you think to being a homeowner, and they have a lot of different programs. So don't rule out buying a home for this purpose. Um, as your first time home buyer, as a first time home buyer, and then turn it into assisted living, it's a great strategy to get, your first property up and running, to have an investment property and not just being a homeowner, living in the property until you get it set up, and then obviously transitioning out once you get a license and begin to get residents in. So I talk to a lot of people and they feel like that home ownership is so far fetched and so hard. I thought the same thing until I went through the process. Had a great realtor, had a great mortgage person. They made it real simple. They just requested documents. We provided the documents. We got a loan, and the rest was history. So don't rule out the home buying a home versus leasing. And I really would like to see more of you guys buying homes, but not to live in them, but to convert them into investment properties for long term income. Creating a sketch, getting the zoning, and fire inspection. So those are like the preliminary things that you're going to have to think about when you're setting up your property. Once you get residents, and or once you get your license, you got to start thinking about the menus. Um, you want to have at least a 4 week menu cycle, and you want to have like a 4 week calendar going out into at least 4 weeks of activities, activities calendar, and a 4 week menu cycle for your staff can see. I mean, for your staff obviously too, and then your residents can know what they're going to be eating. If they have any dietary things, you'll be prepared for it. You're just not trying to figure out, and you don't want your staff just on the fly figuring out what they're going to be making. You want to create an actual menu, 4 week menu cycle. We have those also in our assisted living done for you kit. I mean startup kit, and activity calendars as well, so they can kind of have an idea of what the days and weeks are going to be looking like, the different activities and things that they can do, opportunities to get out and get out and about, do different activities in the community, in the property, in the actual home, and then the stuff that you want to be going out. And also, you definitely want to have some type of transportation for your for your residents, so you can be getting them around. If you're going to have your staff, a live-in staff, you better make sure they have a vehicle, or you have a vehicle that's dedicated to that property or to that facility certain hours, so they can be getting the residents around and stuff like that. So your 4 week menu cycle, and also and it makes the 4 week menu is a state requirement, but it makes shopping a lot easier. And you can kind of prepare meals, and everybody is on the same page with diet, because diet is very important, and it can be time consuming and pricey if you're just kind of doing it on the fly. So make sure you schedule that out, plan it out, budget it out, and same with the activities. You want to make sure they have a lot of stuff going on. Nobody wants to place their family into a facility, and I hear this all the time. Complaints from families say the facility looks beautiful, it's great, but they don't do anything. Like, they don't do anything. There's no activities, and there's so many things you could do as far as activities. You can contact all the different local churches. See if they can have people come by, and not just for religious services or anything like that, but they can come by, play games with the residents, do different activities, learning activities. You can contact the community colleges. You can contact Michael's and places like that where they do arts and craft, and see if they have anybody who would be interested in coming in to the resident, coming to the home, and spending some time with the residents on a consistent basis. But I mean, the sky's the limit. You can figure out this stuff. Pet therapy, you contact different pet codes and stuff like that to find out who's doing pet therapy in your community, and they can put that on the schedule. The Department of Aging is just it's just like the go-to spot for all things senior, and they will have more than enough events and ideas and calendars for you to keep your residents busy all month long. So get in contact with these people, and create an activity calendar, outings, restaurants, movies, plays, shows, all kind of stuff that's going on in different communities. You'll be surprised, and the seniors love it. A lot of times, and then you do get residents who aren't interested in basically doing nothing. They just want to sit in their rooms, and that's okay too. But you definitely want to give them options. So, I kind of went off on a tangent with activities, but activities are very important. The next, you want to have a specific staff structure planned out. You want to have, and this is before you start even taking residents. All of this stuff is like the checklist that you want to have prior to taking residents, admitting residents into your home. You want to have your staff structure in place. How are you going to set it up? I like to have a live-in and then a full-time caregiver, and this is on top of the delegating nurse, who's not there all the time, but she oversees the property, the whole facility. From the nurse's perspective, she's an RN, and she has to have a specific training for us assisted living facilities, and that's called the delegating nurses training or certification. And then you're gonna have the assisted living manager. That's the person who took that training. So you're gonna have that's kind of like the staff structure, the living caregiver, the full-time caregiver who comes in, they come in for a full-time shift, and they usually kind of work it between they kind of I let them kind of work it out. Like if the live-in has some stuff to do during the day, they can kind of move their schedule around so they can kind of help each other out. And if there's really something that we really need some extra help, and we have a full house and we have a lot going on with a lot of activities and different um, residents having to be in different places at different times, we'll also bring in like a part-time person to help out as well. So we'll have the owner. I mean, the owner slash manager, or just the manager that the owner hires, the delegating nurse, the live-in caregiver, a full-time caregiver, and a PRN caregiver for when things get busy and we just need an extra hand. So that's the basic staff structure that we have in place. Um, Again, we're able to use here in Maryland. In most states, you're able to use independent contractors for this as well, so we don't have to worry about workman's compensation. And one thing that I like to do is have my staff, everybody who's basically going to live there, because we deal with a lot of facilities. We're always getting people trained. The place where we get our license. That remember I was referring to. There's a specific nurse who can give the assisted living managers training. I want to also get all my CNAs, all my caregivers trained. So not only are you working with me, you just got a job. Now you just get some free training, to become an assisted living manager, and it's a great value add to the people who are working with you. But it also allows you to sleep at night because your caregiver is not just an average caregiver anymore. Now she's trained just like your assisted living manager to deal with the house when your manager's not available. And that reminds me that Maryland also requires you to have it's called an alternate assistant living manager. So you got to also have an alternate anyway. But I want if not any other caregiver, I want the living caregiver to always be trained in the whole assistant living managers courses, the 80-hour courses, because the state, you never know when the state is going to pop up, and you want to make sure all your bases is covered, all your I's is dotted and your T's is crossed when the states come in there, and you might not necessarily be available to get there and make sure everything is on par, up to par, paperwork and things like that. But if you have your live-in trained to kind of watch out for what's going on as well, she could handle the paperwork. She's not just your average everyday caregiver. She's trained as an assistant living manager. That's a benefit, and again, it allows you to sleep better at night, knowing you have some highly trained staff, opposed to just a caregiver per se. So, on top of the assisted living manager's training and the basic training that a CNA would have, there's usually a certain narcotics training that you want to have your staff take to handle certain drugs, and they have to get certified and approved through the state as well. What else? They have to be med. It's a med tech training, a medical technician, but then also there's another training. Don't get the narcotics training and the med tech training confused, because they're totally different. And this is just kind of like the stuff that happens in Maryland. But when you're thinking about your staff structure, you definitely usually your assisted living manager has to get that training. But the live-in, I would also recommend her getting that training too, or that certification as well, to manage narcotics and know the proper procedures as far as how to store them, keep them safe, and all that stuff. And there's just procedures for that stuff in every state, especially now with the epidemics. Um, so the menu cycles, the staff structure, the delegating nurse, like I said, your assisted living manager, and your alternate manager you want to have in place as part of your checklist going into the before you start taking residents. These are some things you definitely want to have in place. The residence room, you definitely, again, I was kind of talking about it earlier. 100 140 square feet is my comfort place where I feel like two people. I try not to put two people in a space less than that. 80 square foot for a single person. Um, and the required furnishings are usually a twin bed, a nightstand, a lamp, a dresser, and a chair. Those are like the five things that you want to have for each resident in each room. We try to add a couple more things, like we put a TV in there. We just throw a TV on the wall, like a smart TV with all the channels, like the Netflix and all the streaming stuff. So they can have their own room, their own TVs in their room. A tablet. You can give them a tablet so their family can contact them and stuff like that. Provide them with like a little tablet. You can get this tablets from little Samsung tablets that have FaceTime or Facebook Messenger on there where people can call in and talk to their families for like $90, and you can put them in each room. These are just little value adds that you can add to your residents' rooms. Another thing that you want to can be concerned about and pay attention to is the temperature in the home. Um, it has to be at least 70 degrees in the summer. It has to stay 70 and 80 in the winter. If I'm not mistaken, 70 in the summer, 80 in the winter. And that's just what it is. Different states may have different requirements, or may not be that that detailed with the exact temperature. But when the state does come in and do an inspection, they want to see these things, and also the water. I think 120 degrees. Don't quote me. I have to look at it again, but I think it's 120 degrees because when they came, I had the paperwork, and when my HVAC guy came, he had to get the water to that exact temperature. It can't be any higher than that because you don't want to burn your residents. And then in the common areas, you just don't want to have a whole bunch of obstructions. Play things that people will trip over. They have like rails you can get along, like long hallways. If you have long hallways where there's really not anything that to hold on to, because everybody's not necessarily going to be in a wheelchair, but they still may have trouble, getting around, and you want to provide them with much independence as possible. So you can just jump online, go on to Amazon, and get a nice size rail for a nice size hallway, throw it in the hallway, put rails and stuff like that. When it comes to the bathroom, a shower chair, and the spray thing that's not just stuck on the ceiling. I don't know what it's called. The one that you can move around with your hand and help them like that with the bathing, instead of the one that just shoots down from the ceiling. It comes down. The detachable sprayer in your bathtubs, and then you want to have the raised toilet seats. And you want to have raised toilet seats, but then also you want to have a rail if it's possible, so they can get up and get down off the chair. You want to have enough space in the bathroom where a wheelchair can get in there if necessary, and also a aide is in there with them when they're helping with bathing and things of that nature. So these are some of the things you want to think about when you just think about the common areas in the space, and you just want it to be pristine. You want it to be clean, very clear. When you have activity and stuff, you have things out, but then when you clean up, you really want to clean up, disinfect, and just have a really open, clean environment for your residents, and for your caregivers as well that are staying there and spending a good amount of time there. The state requires us to have a separate refrigerator for like with a lock on it for medication that requires to be refrigerated. So that's just another little side note that you want to remember: a locked refrigerator and a locked medicine cabinet. And also, this is something I didn't mention earlier for the room. The residents do have to have a locker box. So if they have personals or valuables, that they can put their valuables in. But this is something you're going to learn. This is one of the things you learn from experience. You do not want them having expensive heirlooms and stuff like that at your location, because if it comes up missing, it's just, even though in your agreement you're going to discuss like things like that, you don't want that on your, in the facility. If they have, some women may have an expensive diamond necklace or a ring or, a watch. You just don't want that stuff hanging out in the facility. We got caregivers, we got family members. We just got too many people for these type of valuable items to come there. And this is something you want to discuss with the family. Say, hey, look, we it's okay if you want to leave them here, but we strongly suggest that you keep them at your family's home, because we don't want the liability and we don't want the confusion if there is anything that comes up missing. So it's just another little side note to think about when you taking in the residence. And I guess we'll talk about that once we get to the residence agreement part. The kitchen, just keeping everything put up, clean, in safe areas. Obviously, knives, forks, stuff like that are sharp. You just put them up, in safe areas where your residents shouldn't really be poking around in the kitchen. It should be the aide going in there, getting the things that they need and just kind of meeting them at the dining room table with it. So, and then you want to have fire, the fire emergency requirements. We like the smoke detectors with the CO2. So it's like a smoke detector and a CO2 detector, carbon dioxide detector. Uh, there was something else. Oh, and then you want to have them hardwired into your home. Some states even require sprinkler systems. Hopefully, if you're not in the state, hopefully you don't have to deal with that, because some people do, and it could get really costly. And sometimes it's even county to county, so it might not even be in your county. But if it is, it's just something you gotta work through. But some states do require sprinklers, and that's just something you want to make sure you're checking into. Also, um, yeah. So, and fire extinguishers. You want to have fire extinguishers, one in the kitchen, one in the utility room, and like say one around like the laundry room, wherever there's laundry equipment, dryers and stuff and things like that, where potential fires could be started. And then on a quick another thing about fire emergencies and requirements is smoking. Sometimes you might want to you get residents who are interested in smoking, or they're smokers, and a lot of people in our country are. So it's something you have to deal with, and it's a personal decision that you have to make with your with your business. Like, do I want to take on that liability, or am I going to turn the client away because he smoked? And I would say that's up to you. That's a decision you have to make, but you definitely have to take into consideration of the liability and the risk that comes with having a 67-year-old person who may have dementia, or on early onsets of dementia, or any other type of, you know, mental slowdown with lighters and stuff like that. If you're going to do it, do not allow them to take the lighters and matches and cigarettes into their room, because no, even if you say don't, they will light up in their room, and that could definitely be a big deal, turn into a huge problem for you and your facility. So if you are going to allow them to smoke, make sure that it's understood with the caregiver that she administers the cigarette, does the lighting, takes the lighter back and puts it up, and same with the tobacco products. And yeah, that's it when it comes to fire. Just some more stuff that I want to make sure you guys understand. Um, Different states require policies and procedures. We provide those in our starter kit. Um, you have to have the records and charts per client. Each client, prior to admission of a resident, you got to have a sample file for each resident. Have sample records and keep a sample file, and then you begin to keep records and charts on each client. The delegated nurse has to make sure that they're being managed correctly, and then your manager should be over top of it as well. And then also you want to have records of all the training for all your staff. All your staff should have a file as well for all of their certifications and all their trainings and all the ongoing trainings that they have in their folder as well, including your nurse. So everybody should have a folder. The residents and the staff should have a folder with all of their information. The residents, all their medical stuff, obviously, and then in their, a copy of their agreement for them and for your records. The delegate nurse, all of her certifications, her license number, all of her paperwork, the manager's paperwork, and the alternate manager's paperwork, and all your caregivers' documentations of their certifications and stuff like that. These are things that you definitely want to have at all times on site, locked up in the file cabinet for in your facility. And again, a lot of states don't require this stuff, but just to keep good records, to maintain a great a facility, a successful facility that's going to be around for the long term, you want to do this stuff anyway. You want to go above and beyond sometimes, even what the states require. We're just so happen to be in a state that does require this stuff, so we're kind of forced to do it anyway. Some more things you want to think about before admission is putting together a great resident agreement. We have one for you again in our starter kit. Healthcare practitioners physical assessment, so that might be a nurse practitioner, a doctor, or whoever is going to have to assess your client. You want to have an assessment before admission so you can know exactly what's going on. But that's one thing. But then you also definitely want to have your nurse go out and during the consultation do check that person out. Do their own assessment, do an assessment for your own records and your own the person who works for your facility, not just our outsider assessment. You want to have a level of care scoring guide. You want to have a guide that kind of directs everyone in your house, in your property, in your facility on what level each person is on, and then as people decline or get better, you can kind of take them up and down the level based on the scoring guide. You want to have documentations of the residents representative. So who's over, basically who's the the power of attorney over the resident, or who's the client is the family. It's not the resident. They're not paying you. You have documentations and contracts signed with the resident. I mean with their representative, not them. And a lot of times people hear client and they think that I'm talking about the patient that we're servicing or giving the care to, and that's not the person. That's not the client. The actual client who I have agreements with are the family members, the POAs, the power of attorneys, and so forth. And these are some more documentations that you're going to have before admission: physician orders and rehabilitation plans, and then also burial arrangements. These we are in a business, but we deal with seniors, and seniors do tend to pass, so you got to have these arrangements and stuff in place. So these are just some more things that you want to make sure you have in place before admissions. The resident, just to kind of go a little bit into detail on the resident agreement. This is like the contract that you have again with the family. The name, obviously, the date of admission, services provided, provisions in the event of a relocation. Another point that you want to have, that I want to make here, is that in case of emergency, in case of a hurricane, a national tragedy, a national emergency, or a statewide emergency, or local emergency, there has to be provisions in place for your residents. So what does that mean? You have to have an agreement with with another facility outside of your immediate area to take your clients there, be able to take your clients there, that they'll be able to take your clients in case of emergency. And that simple as just going to, on a facility. This is most likely a little larger than yours. Obviously, they can take their clients and then more. Um, and you just get a just put it together a small agreement. We have the agreement. We have those agreements in our packet as well. Uh, that that you agreed to allow us to come there. Uh, if an emergency, and it's nothing that's major, but you do it does it is something that you have to have in place. You have to have a transfer agreement with the relocation facility. But it's nothing that's you don't have to spend any money or anything like that. It's just an agreement, and they can use you back. They can use you for theirs and theirs for yours. You know what I mean? And then you just have the responsible party, the POA to sign, and then you can admit the resident once the resident agreement is in place. But you definitely want to make sure you have the services provided, um, and clear, and make sure everyone's clear and understands what the services you're going to be providing and the services you're not going to be providing. Um, I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to kind of talk about continued training for your staff. And when I talk about training, I want everybody trained. The nurses, obviously, they're going to have their training. The assisted living manager, they're going to have their training. But then also, you got to think about your caregivers. I want my caregivers to have the same amount of training, as closest to the training that the most training they can get. Fire and life safety training, infection control, standard precautions, emergency disaster plans, dementia, Alzheimer's training, as we talked about earlier, medication administration training, health and psychological training, resident assessment process, and then the residents' rights. These are trainings that you want to make sure that everyone in your house get, and as more trainings come available, we do have a relationship with different training companies who offer these trainings online that we send our staff to, that our home care staff goes through, and also our assisted living staff. And you want to make sure that everybody's trained. You don't want to have uh, um, a staff that can't handle issues as they arise, because I mean, problems are going to happen. You're going to run in, things are going to happen. You're going to need to have emergency disaster plans. You're going to have um, people who are able to function in hostile environments when health and psychological things come in place. Dementia and Alzheimer's and dementia clients can be very complicated at certain times. So you just want to make sure that your staff is continually being trained and updated with the latest standard practices in some of these things: fire and safety, fire and life safety, infection control standards, and precautions. These are some of the things that you definitely want to make sure that you're constantly implementing and allowing your staff to have access to. So that was basically just a checklist to open a successful assisted living facility, a residential assisted living facility. We have 3 programs that you can check out on our website. The one that refers to majority of just the documentation and some of the training that I discussed is in the starter kit, the assisted living starter kit. Then we have the Done For You program, and now we just rolled out another program where we're actually going to be partnering and staffing in specific states. Our team will come in, and you have the property, we'll set up the business for you, and we'll partner together. So we have some great stuff going on. Again, and that's only in specific states right now. Hopefully, we can expand into more states in the coming months. But thanks again for joining us.